So hello everyone, welcome. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ann Thompson. I'm the president of the WICT DC Baltimore chapter, and this is episode 3 of WICT Wednesdays. And today my good guest, my nice guest.
Well, you don't know yet.
my lovely guest.
Okay, well, I'll take that.
Is Seth Arenstein, and Seth is the TV critic for Cablefax, and he's also the editor of PR News. So welcome to WICT Wednesdays. I'm still working out the kinks of this format here, but so today we're going to talk about what are we watching. It was a subject that one of our mutual friends brought up that we thought, you know, there's so much heavy topics going on right now. Let's just have a lighthearted one. Let's talk about TV. Not that TV isn't lighthearted, because in the cable business, it is, of course, our world. So I thank you so much for joining me, Seth.
Oh, my pleasure, Ann. Thank you. It's fun. Let's have some fun.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, streaming platforms. Before any of this happened, there were way too many for my husband and I to deal with, to think about. It just seems so overwhelming, all of it. There's more content than ever. And it always seems that whenever my husband and I try to find new shows, we always just end up asking our friends. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, our friends seem to be very into documentaries right now. And if any of you have missed McMillions, on HBO, I would look for it because it's fascinating.
It really is. I completely agree with you.
Yeah. So to tell us, how do you find new shows to watch?
Well, I usually ask Ann Thompson's friends because they usually have some very good recommendations. But you know, I as a critic, you get sent a lot of material all the time. They want you to write about their shows. So that's part of the way. Of course, then I just also read other critics, see what they're watching. There is, there's a way to get Netflix to recommend certain genres to you. I know most of you know how to do that. If you don't, just Google, Netflix and recommendations, and it will look at the genres that you've watched and then recommend things from the past that they think work for you. So it's just a combination of things. And then of course, word of mouth too is great. And as I said, I read other critics. I especially like reading in the Wall Street Journal. I like their TV critics are usually very good.
Is it like theater critics or restaurant critics where certain ones have a certain taste than others?
Oh, sure, certainly, and I find certain ones like Dorothy Rabinowitz at the Wall Street Journal. I find I have very similar tastes to her. Yeah. So I generally like what she writes, and I always compare what I've written to what she's written. In Cablefax, I get about 220 words space, which is tiny. And I like if Dorothy Rabinowitz reviews the same thing that I review, and she has many, many more words, but more or less says the same thing. I always consider that a good thing, because I've said it in 220 words, which she has maybe 1,000 words to say. So it's fun. It's like a game for me in that way.
Almost like the Twitter maximum.
Oh yeah. Well, as many of you know, I don't want to do a commercial for Cablefax, but Cablefax has a premium on words. I mean, you've got to be sure. You can't clear your throat. You got to get right to your point. I still remember the first story I wrote for Cablefax. Oh God, 20 years ago now, 15 years ago, and I thought it was a short story. And I sent it was 320 words, and they started laughing at me and said, "Oh, it's way too long for us."
That's funny. So talking about ways that people watch shows now, consume content. My husband and I aren't binge watchers. We've never been the kind of people who can just watch something continuously for hours and hours on end. And we are certainly old enough to have lived through to seeing must-see TV. We're old enough for that. we came upon Breaking Bad long after the show was off the air.
Okay.
And we found that watching one episode a night, or like one episode every other night, we were really excited for more, and we were able to keep up with the story. So, and we find that preferable over a week-to-week format. We're waiting for the rest of The Good Place to drop before we even start picking that up again. So, because we don't like to wait. So, what's your favorite way, or how do you like to consume content?
So, you know, it's a mixture. Sometimes I will go, you know, binge a little bit if I have time. Certainly on the weekends, every now and then. But I have to say, I've been working backward now with like The Sopranos, which I loved that show. And I remember as a critic, when I would get, you know, 6 or 7 episodes to preview, I'd watch them all in a row. Yeah. And then this was before binging. Really, there was no word for binging. I would just go into my office and watch 6 episodes of The Sopranos. I mean, I just couldn't turn it off. Of course, then, you know, the problem is you could be at a party and you're talking to your friends and you go, wait a minute, I may be 4 or 5 weeks ahead of you, you know, in those days when we didn't have HBO Go. So there were some some problems to doing that. But I like to binge, but I also do what you and your husband do. I like, you know, one episode a night for a couple of nights. I'm doing that right now with All the Little Fires. And I'm doing that with Apple TV's The Morning Show. I don't know if you've seen that. There's somebody who likes it. But I could have watched 3 episodes last night, but I said, no, let's watch one because I want to watch the next one tomorrow night. And, you know, but it keeps the story fresh in your head, and that really helps.
Yeah, especially with the complex shows, yes, you know.
Absolutely.
Game of Thrones, we were the same way. Like, we had to just keep up with it. You just couldn't keep track of everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the other thing is, it's interesting, as I said, with The Sopranos, I go from season to season, but I don't necessarily go in order. So, like a few weeks ago, I was watching the 6th season, and then I went back to the 2nd season, and I just play around.
Interesting. Every however many years we rewatch The West Wing. But we have to watch it in order.
Okay.
So that's very interesting that you play around with the order of Sopranos.
Yeah. No, I mean, I watch a season in total, but as I said, I started a few weeks ago with the 6th, and then I went back to the 4th, went up to the 5th, came down to the 2nd.
Interesting. Maybe we'll have to try that with a show that's not so linear in nature.
Yeah.
So when you think about what you like to watch, what are you usually drawn to most for those TV shows? Is it a particular genre? Is it the writing? Like, do you follow a writer around from show to show, or specific actors? You know, The Blacklist for us was a must see because James Spader is, you know, fun. Or is it like a great ensemble? Like, what is it that draws you to a new show that you love?
Well, it's funny, you know, I hate to sound like a broken record, but it's a combination of all these things. I like particular actors, particular directors. If you've read a book that then becomes a series, The Plot Against America is one of them right now. Philip Roth's book is now a miniseries on HBO. I like reading the book and then going to the series and seeing how they've been faithful or not to the book. Certain actors who are now in television series, like, I mean, Al Pacino just did this series on, I'm blanking on which network it was, maybe Hulu, called Hunter or Hunters. I highly recommend it. It is very good. And Al Pacino, you wouldn't recognize him. He does such a great job. You know it's Al Pacino, but boy, he doesn't seem like the Al Pacino we knew. He's terrific in it.
Fascinating.
And, you know, as a TV critic, when you're at the TCA event every 6 months in Hollywood, you meet these people, you see them, and that gets you excited for a certain show. Certainly with comedies. So it's a bunch of things. It's writing. It's the people who are in them now. A great show that I like, and a show for that has great, strong female characters, is Mrs. America, which just started on FX and Hulu.
Yeah, I'm hearing good things about that.
Oh, it's tremendous, and the cast is tremendous, and the actors are so good, and the story's great. So, yeah, I mean, it's a mix.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of, there's always a day where we are thinking we just need flowers. We can't deal with reality. When we went to London in 2018, one night we were in the hotel room and we came across this show called, oh my God, what's it called? Called Gardener's World.
Yeah.
And we can get it on BritBox here. And it's just peaceful. It's about gardening and vegetables and flowers. And sometimes we're just like, we just need flowers. Let's just watch Gardener's World, listen to Monty Don. It'll all be fine. So what's your favorite escapist TV?
Well, in sort of that genre, every now and then I will go on Friday nights and watch the Food Network, and Guy Fieri and his diners, drive-ins, and dives. I think the guy has the best job in television. He really does. Gets to eat all over the place and kid around. I mean, how can you get a better job than that? The only thing is, if he could find all those restaurants and not gain any weight from eating at all, then that would make it even a better job. Right. But that's one piece of escapism that I like. Yeah, that's probably the one that some of the food shows I like. Even there's some shows on Destination America, which is a small Discovery network. Yeah. That they do a competition show about barbecuing.
Oh.
And for some reason, I really enjoy watching people make barbecue. And the thing is that I think they do a very good job with it. I mean, every now and then somebody will use some jargon and they will explain it with a graphic on the show, yeah. which helps.
Yeah.
So those are, I think the food shows I like a lot.
Yeah, we used to watch Food Network all the time. And what was that old show that Bobby Flay had where he was the barbecuing? That one was, we loved that show.
Yeah. I mean, you know what else? I mean, talk about escapist. A lot of the sports networks now are showing old games, historic games, and some not so historic games.
Yes.
I find myself watching some of those old games. I mean, sometimes I know what the outcome is, but it's fun to see the different games and the different announcers and how the players looked in those days. It's kind of nice.
Yes.
When this whole thing happened and all the sports stopped,
yeah, I
thought, oh my God, I would not want to be working at ESPN now, because what do you program? And then I realized, oh God, they have all these games.
Yes.
And I might mention this new series about Michael Jordan that just started.
Oh.
And I mean, I was literally just talking to somebody today who said, I'm not a sports fan, but I love the first 2 episodes. And the thing is, if you go and look at this series on HBO, not on HBO, on ESPN, called 30 for 30. A number of years ago, they did 30 documentaries for its 30th anniversary.
Oh.
They were so good. And specifically, they were so good for people who had no idea about sports.
Yeah.
That they have now done way more than 30. They may have done 300 by now, and they're all just terrific. So finding that the Michael Jordan series is good and appeals to non-sports fans does not surprise me one bit.
Yeah, I'll have to look that one up. I always enjoy it when it comes to be around Super Bowl time and they start playing those shows that sort of break down old Super Bowls and that. I I don't watch the actual game, but I find those documentaries about the older games fascinating. So I'll have to.
You know, I'm an old New York Jets fan, and I have watched the Jets, Joe Namath's Jets, win the Super Bowl in 1968 about 17 times, and it doesn't get old. I like it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So are there any shows that are coming out soon or that you haven't been able to get to yet that you're really, really excited about?
Upcoming shows, I guess not so much the upcoming shows, but some of the, as I said, some of the new shows that have just come out, like the morning show, which isn't that new, but to me, I just didn't get a chance to see it, so that's a good one. Go back and look at The Wire. The Wire, and you can get it for free, by the way, now. I believe HBO has I know they put on 500 hours of free television, including The Sopranos. I believe The Wire's in there too. And go back and look at The Wire and have a good time with that. That's some really good television that, it's funny, at the time, it was always on the precipice of being canceled because nobody watched it, and now it's a classic, so.
Absolutely.
You know, so those would be.
We never got to Penny Dreadful, but.
Oh yes, that's the one. Yeah, I would like to see the new iteration of that coming up on FX. Yeah, with Nathan Lane. Yes.
Yeah, and Run. I'm hearing really good things about Run on HBO.
Yes. Absolutely. I liked Run on it. Yes, I'm ahead on that one, so I don't want to talk too much about it. But yes. The woman actor in there, Merritt Weaver, is a favorite of mine from Nurse Jackie. I don't know if you watch Nurse Jackie, but I can't recommend that one. It's with Edie Falco, who is, Mrs. Tony Soprano, and she plays a nurse, an addicted nurse, actually, to all kinds of painkillers. It might not be the best time to watch that because it takes place in a hospital for the most part, but Merritt Weaver is her cohort in that show and is the co-star of Run. So yeah, that's fun. And Run being a show that has a lot of travel in it, so that it's kind of a nice escape for people who can't travel at the moment.
That's true. As long as we're not yelling at the TV, you're standing too close.
Yeah. No, it's funny. The first show I watched when COVID was starting to get really serious, so I guess it was like February or March, there was a documentary, I can't remember what network it was on, it might have been HBO, and it was about China, and it was about, gosh, I wish I could remember the name of it. It was about young people in China and the pressure from their parents to get married. And it was a fascinating documentary. But the first thing I thought of when I was watching it was, gosh, I wonder what's happened to all these people now. Because their lives, like ours, must have changed tremendously. But there was tremendous pressure to get married from their parents. And I mean, the guilt trips that their parents put on them was, I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe. I mean, it sounded very American to me. And it was all done in Beijing.
Interesting. That's interesting. I have to look for that. I'm always curious about, I was an anthropology major, so that sort of thing always is, I get a little, I'm always curious about that type of thing. So we've got about 10 minutes left. I wanted to also ask you, what are you watching now? You probably have covered a lot of it, but is there anything else that you're just can't get enough of right now?
I should probably go back and rewatch Mad Men, because there's so much subtlety in there that, again, I probably missed it the first time and in the second time. But I'd go back and watch some of that. I can't really recommend Mrs. America enough. I think it's quite good. It just started, so go for that. There is a series, although I'm kind of hesitant to recommend it at this time because it's not an upbeat series, but it's a short series, and I don't think it got enough acclaim. It didn't get enough popular acclaim. I think critically it was very well acclaimed. It was on HBO. It was a series. Oh, I'll think of it. It looked at a British family through the years from like it started now. It started in 2019, but it looked at them in the future, and frankly, it predicted all these kinds of disasters.
Oh my God.
Oh God, was it called Generations? I can't remember. I'll let you know. I've forgotten what it was. It's only four shows. There's a little bit sci-fi to it, but it was very good. Um, so those are some of the things that when I have time, I'll go back and start watching again,
Yeah.
including old baseball games and football games.
We just finished the last season of Succession.
Oh yes. Oh well, of course. Yes.
Yeah, that's something we'll definitely have to go back and revisit. I wasn't sure about that when it started, but then once we got to about the third episode, I was like, I'm in. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, it's fabulous. Great acting, and corporate communicators like we are. My God, some of it was really rang true, didn't it?
Yeah, yeah. The writing was just so well done. Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, does anybody have any questions? I mean, I could go on for hours talking about what we do in the shadows and, killing Eve and all of this.
Okay, killing Eve, yeah.
Yeah. But does anybody on the, we're calling these virtual salons. So does anyone on the salon have any questions for Seth? Yes.
Hey, Seth, it's Rob. Thanks so much
for
joining us today and doing this. Incidentally, we're loving the current season of Ozark with Jason.
Ozark, yes,
just
absolutely,
phenomenally good.
Absolutely.
But we keep reading how production's been suspended across the board. What are we going to be looking at, like in the fourth quarter of this year? When do you think the networks are going to run out of new content?
That's a good question, Rob. I'm not really in a position to answer that. I understand that there are debates and plans afoot at the moment to get people quarantined together for a while and then start shooting on certain things again. But I believe there's enough, as I said earlier, when I first thought about all this, and I thought, oh gosh, I wouldn't want to be a programmer at ESPN now because there are no live games. But then I realized, oh gosh, they've got tons of archives. Now, at least. Back in the old days, by the way, as you know, a lot of the old television is gone. I mean, they just didn't think anybody'd want to watch it after the first time it was on. So a lot of the old programs that you would think would be in an archive are gone. And I know the cable center, one of the things that they do is they try to preserve some of these old programs. But I don't really know when the well runs dry.
Yeah, no,
it's a good question.
Well,
I don't know.
Well, just a couple more plugs. We watched most of Dexter years ago, but missed the first season. So we just watched the end of that, which was phenomenal. I think we'll keep going on that as well. I think Anne might have mentioned Billions earlier. I know that starts up again in a week or two on Showtime, which is phenomenal. So still, even during the pandemic, not enough time to watch all this stuff.
Yeah, and coming to a close and almost ripped out of the headlines, but it couldn't have been because it must have been filmed months ago. But is Homeland, which is talking about a peace deal between Afghanistan and the United States and Pakistan, which actually happened in the midst of COVID, by the way. I mean, it didn't get much play, but at the end of February, the U.S. and the Taliban signed a peace accord. And it's literally in the last few episodes of Homeland. Now, how did those producers know that was coming? I mean, it really, very impressive that they knew that, or that they could predict that, or maybe maybe it was just luck. But Alex Gonsa and Howard Gordon, who obviously know their way around Afghanistan because they just did a documentary on it last Sunday, right after Homeland, right after the penultimate episode of Homeland, by the way. They knew, I guess they knew it was coming. I would go buy a lottery ticket with them if they're going to the store.
It's phenomenally good, and this season is absolutely riveting. I'll be
Yeah.
brokenhearted when it
Yeah.
wraps.
Yeah, next week, next Sunday. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Seth? Mary.
So Seth, the question, knowing that people are inside and randomly watching and picking and choosing, without naming any shows in particular, there are things rising to kind of meteoric fame that normally people would not have given a second look, and creating spin-off shows and everything else. Anything out there that you might say in terms of what a prediction might be, or the momentum behind those things, or something that you might see also taking legs similar to what's happening with another show?
Oh, you mean a show that has an animal's name in the title? But I'm just guessing here.
Yeah. Nobody would have watched, or very.
Okay. Now this is I haven't either, by the way. This is a little controversial, but since you asked, there is a show on, I believe it's on Netflix, and it's called Too Hot to Handle. And it might actually, because we're all homebound and we can't go anywhere, and our bar has lowered. It is I don't know. Some people are nodding their heads so they know what it's about, but it's sort of a reality competition show with some of the most beautiful actors and they're all models. They're all in their 20s. They walk around, at least in the first episode, they walk around in bikinis and very small bathing suits. And they think they're being matched up. Well, it turns out that they're not. It turns out that the object of the game is not to touch physically or kiss or anybody. And that's what the show is about. So, and it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. It's not family viewing, I will tell you that now, but it might rise to the level of sort of cult worship that this show that has the animal that used to be the mascot for Mobil and Exxon before that, I guess.
And we
Mobil before
heard the prediction here first.
Yes,
So
you heard it here first.
side scoop. Thank you for that.
Okay.
All our friends now.
Very lowbrow prediction there. I'm sorry. I'll tell you what, talking about predicting, it's very hard to predict about television. And that is it's hard to predict about television. It's hard to predict about actors, individual actors and individual shows. Rob may remember this at TCA a number of years ago. There was an HBO show that George Clooney had a lot to do with, and it took place here in Washington, D.C., and Mary Madeline was involved in it. And I remember watching the clips at TCA and thinking, oh, this is going to be fabulous. Steven Soderbergh was the director of it. Oh, this is going to be great. And it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. It just didn't go anywhere. And then you look, I remember seeing Kristen Bell in a small role in a Hallmark Channel movie when she was about, 16 or 17. And at that point, I realized you can't make predictions about actors. Don't do that, because you don't know what they're going to do. You don't know what kind of career choices they're going to make. And I remember writing guardedly. I said, I don't know what she's going to do with her career, whether she's going to be stable or unstable. But boy, she's got a lot of talent, and this is the first time I've seen her, and let's see where she goes. All right, so I was right on about her, but it's hard to make predictions.
Yeah, sure.
Hey Seth, so the pandemic has created like a whole new genre of programming, which is basically live from home now,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Ellen DeGeneres, now that we're around in the daytime, we're getting to see all that stuff. Or American Idol's another example. They will continue the contest from the contestants' homes.
Right.
I keep asking myself whether that's something that's here to stay, or whether that'll dry up at the end of the pandemic. Do you have any sense of that, or have you come across any research showing how successful that stuff has been?
Yeah, it's again another good question. It certainly makes celebrities more real to us being in their home, when their hair's not done, when their makeup's not done. And then, of course, you see some of them who look like they're in these beautiful homes, and their makeup and their hair look great. And you go, could they have really had a makeup artist stand 6 feet away from them and do all that? So, you know, I don't know. And again, you've seen some interviews when Zoom isn't working, or when Cisco's WebEx isn't working too well, you know, fall apart completely. I think, though, yeah, I mean, I think television now realizes that this isn't such a terrible platform. I mean, sure, there are problems here and there, but hey, you know, if you can't get somebody into a studio, why not? I think it will go further. I think it will help. Yeah, I definitely do.
I think it will probably at least make its way into the content. So I was, something you asked, Mary, and I was immediately thought about Sherlock, which find it if you haven't watched it, it's fabulous. And how they were using the texting, and they did it slightly different. And I'm now wondering, what's the show that's going to have Zoom, you know, like things as a part of the plot, or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll show up. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Anything else for Seth, or anything else you just thought of that you need to make sure we see, Seth?
No, I think that's it. Keep an eye on your favorite shows. Keep an eye on things that you didn't get a chance to watch. Look at critics, see people's lists, and give it a shot. I mean, and the other thing, I guess the last thing I would say is, don't judge a series by the first show. The first show, the pilot, sometimes is kind of slow moving. They have to introduce all these characters. They have to introduce plots. Give it like a wine. I see somebody's drinking wine there. Cheers, by the way. Let it breathe a little bit. Give it a couple of episodes and see where you are, maybe at the beginning of the second or third episode, and go from there. Don't judge it too quickly.
Right. Yeah. It's like the first episode of Star Trek, the original series, with Spock's like yelling at everybody. Yeah. let them breathe a little into their characters.
Speaking of Star Trek, I don't know if any of you have watched Picard on CBS All Access with you know, Patrick Stewart. Totally recommend that one.
Okay.
It's only 8 episodes. And of course, Sir Patrick Stewart, you know, fabulous. Great graphics, great special effects, some very good characters. And anyway, that's a good one. It's called Picard. It's the CBS All Access.
I had a quick question, actually. I'm curious if you've heard anything about the new Perry Mason remake on HBO.
No, I have not. What have you heard?
Just seen the previews. It's with Matthew Rice from The Americans.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Hey,
Yeah, I mean,
Katie, this is my colleague Katie Mercier from NCTA. Katie, while you're on, you spend a lot of your time in pop culture and looking at this stuff. What are the shows that you're watching right now?
I feel like I've been the one woman hype person for Mrs. America and Plot Against America, so I am very jazzed. And I've also been the hype person for you don't say that actors are going to be big someday, but Anthony Boyle, who plays Alvin on the Plot Against America, I feel like he's going to be the next big thing. You know, he's done Broadway, he's done movies. I feel like he's going places. But now you're scaring me, like I shouldn't say things like that.
Well, you don't know. It's just that you don't know. I mean, and still you can, like, by the way, I just want to say, Michael C. Hall, who plays Dexter, Rob, is on I believe he's in an Acorn series where he's putting on a British accent. I can't remember the name of the series. It's a mystery series. He's putting on a British accent. Not bad either.
Oh, I saw him in Hedwig and the Angry Inch doing a German accent. It was not stellar.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I saw him on Broadway in Chicago, and he was pretty good. He was actually pretty good. He sang and danced pretty well.
Billy Flynn?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's like John Malkovich's accent in The New Pope. I want to like it, but I'm just not sure. Yeah.
Okay. I kind of like the new Pope, actually. And I like the two Pope. You know, the other thing, I guess the other thing we didn't mention are all the movies that are on TV now. The Two Popes, I thought was really good. Matthew Rhys, I guess it's not a TV movie, but I just watched him in the Mr. Rogers movie, A Wonderful Day in the Neighborhood with Tom Hanks, and Matthew Rhys was in that. He was a small part, but he was very good. Some of the other movies that have launched on, I guess on Netflix I thought were pretty good. The movie with Adam Driver and let's see, Adam Driver.
Scarlett Johansson?
Yes. Yeah, that was pretty, I liked it. It was long. And the Martin Scorsese movie, of course, was long, but I liked it. I watched it in one sitting. I didn't break it up.
Well, that's good. All right.
I mean, as I think I said in one of my columns, Rob, I mean, not only should cable be proud of the infrastructure for the the internet and that, it's look at all the programming it's doing. It's really, and it's a lifeline for so many people with news and I think we have to mention CNN and MSNBC and Fox, and then people working very hard.
Yeah.
Even our friends at C-SPAN
and C-SPAN as well. Exactly.
Of what they've been
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So I think cable should be holding its head pretty high at this point, I would think.
Yeah.
Thank you, Seth. We'll quote you on that.
And frankly, all the nice things that they're doing, all the good that they're doing in terms of giving back to the community and free Wi-Fi and some of the things that Brian Roberts has done recently and Cox and Charter, it's not gone unnoticed, I think.
That's good. Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, Seth, thank you very much for joining us. And this has been a great conversation.
Yeah.
And everybody, have a great rest of your evening. And please join us again for next week's WICT Wednesday.
Okay. Stay healthy, too.
Yes. Wash those hands.
Thanks, guys. Great to see everybody.
Bye.